Welcome to the EAS webinar on understanding the role of your U.S. agent. I think we'll start with a quick review of what a U.S. agent truly is. By FDA's definition, under Section 201E of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, or commonly referred to as the Act, a U.S. agent means a person residing or maintaining a place of business in the United States. For your purposes, this person has got to be identified by name and in writing to the FDA, and they're required only for foreign firms and facilities that are engaged in the submission of applications or distribution of goods to the United States. The U.S. agent must actually be a real person who resides within the United States. This individual is typically not screened or certified by the FDA to perform those functions, does not need to be a U.S. citizen, and is not necessarily an employee of the company that is utilizing their services. However, they can be an employee of that company, and as such would act in that capacity for decision-making and responses to the agency. A few things that the U.S. agent can't be is it cannot be a simple mailbox, answering machine, or answering service that's established in the United States. And it actually has to be a place where an individual acting as a foreign agent's facility agent is not physically present. Okay. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Victoria, who's going to share some experiences around some common misuses of the U.S. agent term, and some confusion that comes up multiple times a year when we work with different foreign clients.
Yes, so because the term U.S. agent is used for different agencies of the government, there has been confusion with CBP, which is the Customs and Border Protection. So a U.S. agent in that case is definitely different from your U.S. agent for FDA purposes. For Customs and Border Protection, that would be the importer of record. So that's someone who's going to be ensuring all goods are appropriately documented and valued for entry into the country. They're responsible for payment of duties, tariffs, and fees for the imported goods. So really nothing to do with the FDA. Also, within the FDA, there is the FSVP, the Foreign Supplier Verification Program for food facilities, and a U.S. agent must be named in some instances where food's coming into the country and the owner or consignee is not available already, so they'll have to appoint what they've termed a U.S. agent. And in this instance, that is going to be someone who is going to act as the importer of record for FSVP purposes, which is ensuring the safety of the food that's entering. That's far more involved than your FDA U.S. agent for just your registration purposes. It can be the same person, but it isn't always necessarily.
Okay, thank you, Victoria. Moving on to our next slide. Why do you need a U.S. agent? And the simplest way to put it is because the FDA's regulations require you to have a U.S. agent if you're operating as a foreign entity, selling your products and making formal applications to the FDA. So by regulatory mandate, it's a requirement. The FDA requires a contact within the U.S. To accommodate time zone differences around the globe, and in many cases to help navigate the language barriers that may exist. So there is a practical sense other than just fulfilling a regulatory need, and that is the practical ability of the FDA to conduct its communications according to its local work day and time requirements. So that U.S. agent becomes your person to be in direct communication with the FDA and facilitates those communications to coordinate things such as inspections, responses to application inquiries, any GMP issues that may be going on, or other registration or listing problems that often arise. That way, the agent will work with the FDA on the U.S. time zone with that individual on your behalf. Will you sleep comfortably? We'll be working hard at the desk for you. What are the specific regulated segments So under the FDA's purview, presently the requirements are that you have a U.S. agent appointed when dealing with foreign manufacturers and establishments related to drug products, medical devices, foods, dietary supplements, and FD&C colors. So those are the food, drug, and cosmetic colors which require certification by FDA itself. Just to give you a quick review of the regulatory wording and requirements as they're written for foreign drug facilities under Section 21 CFR Section 207.69b, the United States agents, registrants of foreign establishments subject to this part must designate a single United States agent. So in the case of working with EAS, I am by name personally assigned and appointed by your firm to represent you as your U.S. agent. We cannot submit simply a company name or a generic mailbox affixed to EAS as the U.S. agent in order to carry out and function as your U.S. agent activity. A couple of the other requirements that the FDA mandates specific to the drug facility registration is, of course, item number 1, reviewing, disseminating, routing, and responding to all communications from the FDA. And when I say all, and where the FDA has it, they don't necessarily mean all and every and all communication that can come from the FDA, but by and large, it are the things that are routine in nature, such as for an ANDA or an NDA application where there is a complete response letter or request for information. Those will be transmitted through the U.S. agent. For any facility registration issues, failure to pay fees, things like that will come back through the U.S. agent to you, as well as the notification of pending inspection will come to the U.S. agent first. Responding to questions concerning the drugs that are manufactured and marketed within the United States. So if there is an inquiry or need for additional information from the FDA's perspective, most often they will identify the drug product and manufacturer, find the U.S. agent as listed in their registration or the application on file, and from that point drive all their communications through that U.S. agent to you. At some point, the U.S. agent may not necessarily need to stay in the chain of communication, but you will be there throughout to facilitate the link up and coordination between the two parties. Assisting FDA in scheduling inspections. And the fourth bullet is, really want to call your attention to the last sentence, is providing information and or documents to the U.S. agent is equivalent to providing the same information or documents to the foreign registrant. So the FDA will use the U.S. agent and counts it as equivalent to putting that information and request in the hands of the company directly. In most cases, they will also send that to you, but if they are unable to get a hold of you or get timely communications and they provide it to the U.S. agent, that serves as their formal notification to us. So a good tip is when you're working with your U.S. agent, make sure you update their name in the appointment letter if it changes. Make sure that the U.S. agent has valid contact information for the company points of contact, the head of regulatory or the head of quality most often, so that you can facilitate clear and easy communication back and forth. A couple of other areas where it's required to have a U.S. agent by appointment letter is when there's a submission of a new drug application under 21 CFR 314.52 or for abbreviated new drug applications under 314.95. And effectively, this states that you will identify an individual who resides in the U.S., has a place of business in the United States, and a name and address of that U.S. agent must be provided with that application, specific to the application name and product number and the FDA assigned identifier. Another couple of areas that you may want to consider, although it is not required presently under the regulations, is when you're in the business of filing drug master files or IND, investigational new drug submissions by a foreign company. Both of those submissions oftentimes come with requests and inquiries and the need for additional information or clarification. And the appointment of a U.S. agent would be by letter attached to that file, and it gives the FDA and the CDER reviewers the opportunity to have someone in the country to reach out to as initial point of contact to work with you to resolve those inquiries. For foreign medical devices, effectively, it is the same aspects that we just covered under the drugs. At the time of registration, you will have to have the U.S. agent information prepared and identified to go in with your submission as part of the actual requirements. The U.S. agent has to reside in the U.S. There's a recurring theme. That's why we're called U.S. agents. We live in the U.S. and take care of business for you. Upon request from the FDA, the U.S. agent shall assist the FDA in communications with any foreign establishment, respond to questions concerning the establishment and its products that are being imported or offered for import into the U.S., and assist with the scheduling of inspections. Again, these are things which often come in. The FDA will issue a notice that they want to inspect. It comes to the U.S. agent, and you're generally provided with a 10-day time frame to respond to the FDA that you accept the notice of inspection and provide an attached worksheet that has to be filled out with background information. So very important segment that the agent should fulfill for you. The last item, number 3, is foreign establishments at the U.S. agent shall report changes to the U.S. agent name, address, phone number, or status to the FDA within 10 days. Again, another helpful tip is that is a compliance and regulatory requirement to update information pertaining to your appointed U.S. agent. It is also one of the things that often goes unchanged or forgotten about. When you make a change in the agent itself, the letter has to come from you and be signed by you. So again, it's just to make sure that communication channels remain open, clear, and effective. At this point, I'm going to let Victoria talk to you a little bit about the specific requirements for U.S. agents related to food, dietary supplements, and colors.
Okay, so for foreign food facilities and products, following additional information is required: the name, full address, phone number, and email address of the foreign facility's U.S. agent, and an emergency contact phone number and email address, which can be someone from your company, but frequently is, we frequently use the U.S. agent as that emergency contact number for the FDA to get in touch with if they have any urgent issues. This slide just shows you the FDA's examples of food. Mostly we use this to highlight that dietary supplements and dietary ingredients are considered foods to the FDA. We get a lot of questions on that. I think particularly from Europe, dietary supplements I think are similar to drug products, but here in the U.S. they are considered a food. So the food regulations have to be followed for the dietary supplements, along with there are some specific dietary supplement regulations as well. So for the dietary supplements, since they're considered food under 21 CFR 1.227, the subclass of food is differentiated by being a food taken by ingestion that is accompanied by a specific structure or function claim. So these are dietary supplements and dietary ingredients. And then for color suppliers, all foreign color manufacturers must have an appointed U.S. agent. And in the case of foreign manufacturers requesting batch certification, all color additives have to have FDA approval, but there are some, typically synthetic additives, that need more specific batch certification, so that you send a sample to the FDA, they do tests on it, and they provide a certificate that it passes and it's safe to use. And in that event, the U.S. agent would have to sign the request that goes into the FDA along with your sample. So you have to have your U.S. agent named on that as well. And I will turn this back over to Brian.
Great. So now you know a little bit about what the U.S. agent is and why you need it for your particular business or firm's activities. So now, as a U.S. agent, why don't we talk about why you need it and start to get a little bit further into what it can do for you and help advance your regulatory compliance and business needs. So the next question I'll have is, when is that U.S. agent needed? U.S. agent must be appointed upfront and in writing. So it's not an email and it's not a verbal or a phone message. You actually have to write a formalized letter on your letterhead that is signed by an officiating member of the company that will be provided to the U.S. agent, and we will in turn submit that, or your U.S. agent will in turn submit that to the FDA as appropriate. You need to have that U.S. agent relationship already underway or established at the time of establishment registration, because most often that particular by name individual contact information is required with the registration process. Certainly need to have it in place prior to the submission of any formal applications such as NDAs and ANDAs, as that letter will be or should be cross-referenced to the specific NDA or ANDA number and signed and submitted as part of that application submission for the FDA Center for Drug Reviewers to acknowledge and utilize. And certainly, if you're a little behind the eight ball, you really have to have it prior to making any shipments into the United States, because once again, that U.S. agent without that letter cannot work on your behalf to try to figure out any issues which may occur during importation, detention, or delays or inquiries from the FDA, or even Customs and Border Protection will, on occasion, use the U.S. agent, at least as the point of contact, to convey information back and forth. So now we get into the really fun part. What does a U.S. agent do other than sit in the office and drink coffee and wait for your call? So one of the main purposes, obviously, is that the U.S. agent will liaise with the FDA on your behalf. So they generally don't make blind communications to the FDA for you. It's related or should be related to an inquiry or question or need that you have identified. And likewise, it should be related to a contact or inquiry coming from the FDA regarding your facility, your operations, or application. We will carry that out for you in written and oral communications. We will pass requests for notifications and requests back and forth. A good U.S. agent should also include a tracking mechanism to understand that when the agency has asked you to maybe acknowledge a pending inspection that they're trying to schedule, if it's been 5 days and they haven't heard back from you, they should probably have that tracker to call you or email you and remind you that there's certain information that has to be provided and you have to formally acknowledge the request for the inspection. Facilitating communications is obviously the biggest one and helps you overcome the time zone differences and in many cases the language barriers that may exist. The other thing the U.S. agent should be able to do for you when doing that communication is help you interpret and understand why the agency may be asking for a particular piece of information or demonstrating a degree of concern around the situation. Oftentimes what the FDA presents in writing does not necessarily convey all of the detail and history behind the FDA's regulations or regulatory enforcement approach. That U.S. agent should be able to help you understand that and know when you should move quickly or when there's enough time to ask clarifying questions and the like. Another area that I want you to be aware of the U.S. agent must do for you is, in the case of pharmaceutical drug products, is they have to be the point of notification to the FDA in the event you are conducting any formal recall or market withdrawal activities. So if you have a drug product sold in the U.S. and for some labeling, quality, contamination issues that cause you to come to the point of recalling that product from the market, the FDA expects that they will receive the initial notification through their U.S. agent. Again, what you should look for when you're shopping for a U.S. agent and U.S. agent services is you should essentially So a properly chosen agent is essential to ensuring your company's objectives are met. Look at the U.S. agent with a magnifying glass and a critical eye and listen for some key things. They should have a strong background in the regulatory field in which you are engaged in. Having a U.S. agent who is incredibly strong in the food industry and food regulations is wonderful as long as you're a food company trying to sell your products in the U.S. It probably isn't quite the same thing if you're a pharmaceutical company trying to navigate a abbreviated new drug application submission process and trying to understand the drug manufacturing GMPs and why the agency will be asking certain questions. They should be responsive and have the ability to provide adequate coverage. I'll use this as an advertising note for EAS. As a U.S. agent, we have a goal that we try to pass all FDA communications and confirm receipt by our clients within 24 hours of notification from the FDA. Most often, we'll acknowledge that contact by the agency within an hour and then provide it on to you immediately. So as we look at those different things, that's something that you should be aware of because it is really representing you, and a fast response to the agency is always viewed with more favor than the person who delays to the absolute last minute. They should have an understanding of the FDA's internal operations, processes, and review approach to help guide you on any potential questions or gaps that may exist with your documentation to help you avoid that. And they should have the ability to conduct registration and product listing updates on your behalf to ensure your products are codified within the FDA's database in an appropriate manner. A few other things that you want to look for in your U.S. agent is their ability and understanding of the complexities and varying requirements of each of the FDA's governing centers' detailed requirements. The FDA has innumerable guidance documents for industry, regulations, and regulatory interpretations, which all come into play for foreign manufacturers as well as domestic. A U.S. agent that has the ability to understand those and provide you the appropriate guidance up front can oftentimes speed the rate at which issues are resolved, help facilitate a more cohesive and quicker review of your applications, and certainly resolve any conflicts should they arise. And just as an example, some of the routine communications that come from the Center for Drugs are refusal to accept notifications, meaning they won't take your application because it's missing certain key pieces of information or is a product which is not actually open for that type of application to be accepted, information requests, complete responses, deficiency letters, and the like. The other thing that you should look for in a U.S. agent is that they can provide a templated letter and format with proper references so that as you write your communications, it's clearly communicated and linked back to your ongoing file or communications with the FDA so that nothing is left to chance or lost during that lengthy communication process. The U.S. agent also helps navigate various FDA communications on submission requirements and expectations, can guide and advise you through the various processes, as we've already mentioned, including registration and drug listing requirements or medical device listing, ensuring that your food facilities are registered properly with the right annotations and context. Some other benefits of the U.S. agent you might want to consider will be covered in the next few slides. So, the ability to assist you in the preparation for dealing with the FDA and advocate on your behalf. Most of the foreign firms I deal with are earnestly trying to meet the FDA's voluminous and confusing requirements, and it really does help to have a U.S. agent who works, as a member of your team to help you facilitate that. So preparing for an inspection, assistance with compliance issues specific to a particular product, which you find quite often in the medical device arena and OTC drug products, where there are monographs and standards that are already written into the regs that may not be clear to you. responding to FDA 43 inspection observations or warning letters that you may have received, and support during a product withdrawal or recall to help you understand the attachment B information that the agency will request and help convey the most current status back and forth with the agency. Some of the other areas are preparing for an FDA inspection. Again, your U.S. agent will be notified up front, and if they're knowledgeable in the regulatory requirements and framework under which you're going to be inspected, they can help advise you quite frequently on current hot topics that the agency may be looking for by simple communication with the Office of Foreign Inspections. They can often help define or refine the scope of the pending inspection, can assist you with how the FDA conducts an inspection and what the steps are and the sequence in the process so that you're a little better prepared and more comfortable once that FDA investigator shows up at your facility. If you're unfortunate enough to have a product shipment that is detained by Customs and Border Protection as an FDA regulated commodity, Customs and Border Protection obviously takes the first crack at it to make sure everything meets the U.S. requirements, but when it's the FDA regulated commodity, it also requires review and clearance of that FDA import officer to assess the compliance and make sure everything is in place. So in the event you have something detained because of FDA regulatory issues or the perception of issues, your U.S. agent should be able to help contact that federal agency, determine what the real issues are, and help navigate how to resolve those in a timely and effective manner. The other key piece that the U.S. agent can help you with, and I just want to note up front, this is wholly on the accountability of the firm itself, of the company, to make sure they respond to 43s or warning letters. And it is absolutely correct if that company sends the responses directly to the address that the FDA will provide to you. However, they will also accept the responses provided through the U.S. agent on your behalf. And again, many times it helps to have somebody who is working in the United States with the FDA in the past to review your responses, help understand if you've gotten all of the key information with the level of detail and supporting documentation that the FDA normally expects to see. And the other thing that at least we have done at EAS is we have helped be the proofreader and help work through the difference in language barriers for translation into English grammar or proper grammar, so that it puts the clearest and cleanest piece of information in front of the FDA in which to review and make decisions on. Again, your U.S. agent should be able to help you with all of those things to give you the best benefit of the relationship. And the last area here that I wanted to talk to you about is assistance with product recalls and withdrawals. Again, we already briefly mentioned that if you're in a quality or regulatory issue with a product that you are marketing and have distributed in the U.S., and you need to retrieve that product from the market, the FDA, by regulation for drug products at least, does require that notification to come from the U.S. agent. And if you think that they probably don't necessarily track that, I will tell you personally, I have received phone calls from the FDA asking me why one of our clients was recalling product and why we had not been the source of notification to alert the FDA to that situation. So it is something the agency is very concerned about and very active, and it's good for everyone to understand. When you're in a recall scenario, the FDA views that is tantamount to protecting U.S. public health and even the health of foreign patients and consumers where our products are sent overseas. It's one of the core missions that the FDA has, and they want to make sure that everything is taken care of in the appropriate manner and it is traceable. So once that initial notification has been made to the FDA by your U.S. agent, you as the company can pick up all aspects of that follow-on communication to the FDA. It is advisable that you keep your U.S. agent in the loop and that you allow them to continue to feed the FDA the information that you are providing to them or requested to provide in the line of recall updates, your effectiveness checks, and any other additional actions, and that might be the expansion of the recall to other lots or other products, or the closeout of the recall that you know you have retrieved 100% of any distributed product that you can account for. So again, just another area that a lot of folks using agents don't necessarily understand that is an area that the FDA does expect direct communication through the U.S. agent, at least in the initial phases. And again, is the closing slide before we start going to questions and answers. We have the U.S. agents can assist pharmaceuticals, in the pharma area with preparation and filing of INDs, NDAs, drug master files, and get that to the agency, to the right offices, and help track responses or questions across all of these. Medical devices, common areas that you could expect an agent to help you with are 510K pre-market clearance applications, 513Gs, which are requests for device classification, pre-market applications, investigational devices. In the food area, the LACF registration process would benefit from having a U.S. agent involved, as that's an actual process that needs to be documented and filed with the FDA. Color manufacturers, as Victoria has already mentioned, is not just getting the certification, but also the processing and submission of the samples for testing and certification by the FDA. Again, your U.S. agent being involved in that is critical to make sure you can move forward as rapidly as possible as your product sits in the warehouse awaiting shipment and certification. Of course, every client, regardless of the particular industry segment you are involved in, would benefit from a U.S. agent's perspective and assistance in navigating the registration and product listing requirements that the FDA has in the renewal process, preparation for inspections, aid with responding to 483s or warning letters or general inquiries and updates that from time to time the FDA will make of you, helping you with any corrective action plans when necessary. Mostly those come out of situations related to inspections, but occasionally they also come through the various centers doing the review of applications where you have multiple applications pending where a similar failure point or gap has been identified during the review process. And of course, the last thing that an agent can do for you is assist you with detained products and navigating both the FDA import branch as well as some of the customs and border protection requirements, working with your company directly as well as your designated U.S. broker.
I just want to jump in real quick on that last point for the detained products. Do make sure if there's an FDA issue that you get in contact with your U.S. agent immediately. We have had clients that try to resolve the issues themselves, and if the FDA only gives you 3 weeks to resolve it and you come to us after 2 weeks, it's going to be difficult for us to get those products out of detainment. So you definitely want to reach out to your U.S. agent as soon as possible.
Great. So at this time, we also have Mr. Alan Saylor, who is our Senior Director of Food and Cosmetic Consulting Services with EAS. And we'd like to now open it up to any questions or comments that you may have that we could try to address for you and share with the rest of the folks online.
Thanks, Brian, Victoria, and Alan. First question is generally what is the time requirement for a response to an FDA request? Does the FDA give second notifications if a response is not received?
Good question, and I will say in large part that depends on the particular FDA office and situation you're dealing with. So I will talk to you about drugs and medical devices. In general, when those areas have a request coming from the FDA, they will give you a specific response date. Many times that official request for information or clarification gives you between 7 to 10 days for what they consider minor issues. When there are major or critical issues that they are looking into where they believe it will take more time, you may expect as much as 30 to 45 days. And again, the FDA will generally let the initial time lapse and allow a company to not respond in a timely manner, and may make maybe one more attempt in writing to contact you to notify you that they're still waiting for the pending response, and then failure to provide that information after that really does jeopardize the ability of the review cycle to continue and jeopardize the opportunity of success for getting that application approved. So the answer is it depends. Your U.S. agent should be able to work with you if it's a case where you need additional time. This happens quite frequently, where the agency thinks it's a simple request. And when you talk with the company, they're taken aback that it may take them, a week to put the information together, but it may require additional testing to be performed, which could take 30, 60, 90 days to complete and go through the quality process. In those cases, you work with a U.S. agent and they should be able to get back to the FDA with a request for an extension, providing the rationale, and making sure that everybody is coordinated to that point.
This is Alan Saylor. I think Brian covered pretty much on the food side as well. I would have a couple of pieces of advice. When you receive this, please contact your U.S. agent, as both Victoria and Brian said, or if it isn't a U.S. agent issue, please contact somebody like EAS, because if you are not certain, if there is no information about the timeline for response, you want to contact FDA immediately or as soon as you have some background information and get that, because on the food side, it used to be begging forgiveness was an acceptable strategy occasionally. It's pretty much not an acceptable strategy anymore. FDA, with the new preventive controls regulation, has very little tolerance or patience without a response. Now, if you get a response that says 7 to 10 days and is just not possible, we would encourage you to engage or have the U.S. agent engage FDA, provide the information you can, and let them know what you cannot. So communication is tremendously important. The other thing I would suggest to you is that we had one client that wanted to share everything. And we're not trying to hide anything, please understand, but also giving FDA information that is not necessarily appropriate or pertinent to the specific request is also not a good idea, and can be viewed somewhat negatively by FDA that maybe we just don't have ourselves organized, our act together, and so forth. So just a couple of points. Thank you.
All right, next question. Does a U.S. agent need to be available 24/7?
As much as people would like to think that's the answer, it's not. What the FDA expects is that U.S. agent will be available to them during the conduct of FDA's normal work schedule. So you can account that for, on the U.S. Eastern Standard Time, generally between the hours of 7:30 in the morning until 5 o'clock in the afternoon, that U.S. agent needs to be sort of available and on station. Rarely does the FDA communicate formally outside of that general time zone. Rarely do you receive an inquiry on the weekends. But again, I think it depends on your particular situation and circumstance. So a few occasions where I would say the FDA might appreciate having a U.S. agent that is available 24/7 are cases where there is a short notice pending inspection, and they have to communicate information to you rapidly to make final coordination situations. In the heat of some last-minute review work for drug applications, it becomes critical that that U.S. agent be able to receive and pass information rapidly. The FDA certainly makes it known when they feel it's urgent. And from your perspective, if you know you are coming down to the wire regarding a particular situation, working with your U.S. agent to understand that certainly helps. So we could, at EAS, we'll make the arrangements to have someone, periodically checking for voicemail and email contacts, later in the evening or over a weekend or holiday, where we know there's something that is very time sensitive. So again, you should look for that kind of service with your U.S. agent. And I'm going to let Victoria add a few things. She does a tremendous amount of contact in this area.
I would say the one area the FDA does require your U.S. agent to be available 24/7 is on the food facility registrations. They do require that they can reach the U.S. agent at any time. And that's pretty much it.
This is Alan, and to just give you, maybe this is hearkening back to our first question, but it is still, I think, in play here. And that, two pieces of advice. The first is that if you commit to a timeline for response, or your U.S. agent does, do not miss that timeline. It's not like they're going to take your firstborn if they do, but what you're trying to do is build a level of trust. And in some cases, FDA may be aware of you and your situation, which may or may not be a good thing, but you're trying to build this trust, and it's built a little at a time. It can be destroyed, just one little mistake. Somebody got sick and somebody left for a week on holiday, and they were the critical person to respond. Does FDA understand that? Yes. Are they tolerant of that? Less so today than in the past. The other thing is, when you do communicate, how do you communicate? We had one situation where the client was communicating mostly by voicemail. Somehow, FDA acknowledged they never got those voicemails. Now, it's not that we doubted the client, but there was no way for the client or us to prove that that communication occurred. So as you may have phone conversations, that's not a problem. Always follow up, particularly if it's critical communications, if it's timeline communications, if you're sharing key piece of information that FDA requested, not a problem with sharing it via phone, but please follow up with an email or something else that you can refer to in the future. Thank you.
We have a number of questions related to the Foreign Supplier Verification Program. Some are asking if EAS offers services here. Others are asking about exporting from Canada to the U.S. Products that would be unsold for use in trade shows and samples. So Alan, would you be able to talk a little bit about the FSVP program and how EAS can help?
Sure, be happy to. Thank you, Amy. There's a number of questions embedded, so I'm going to try to cover general and then specific. And Amy, if I missed something, please remind me. The FSVP program and the EAS services, there are there's actually three primary services or requirements for a foreign food manufacturer to ship a product in. The first is registration, and Victoria covers that. The second is you have to have an FSVP importer. Now, you heard the term that Brian and Victoria talked about, U.S. agent. That's for trade purposes. The FSVP importer is a new term, a new category. In fact, many exporters into the U.S. market, and even some of their customs and trade people aren't even aware of it. This became effective May 30th of 2017. You have to have an office. The office has to be located within the U.S., and the FSVP importer has to have some interest in the product being exported. Doesn't mean they have to own it, take possession. They have to have an interest. That is it. Anybody can set up an FSVP importer. The important part of that is very similar to what I heard Brian say. If there's a problem, FDA will not go overseas and investigate. They will first go to the FSVP importer and expect answers. So that FSVP importer, as Victoria said, must be available 24/7 to address any FDA questions. The second important part of FSVP is the qualified individual. The qualified individual works under the auspices of the FSVP importer can be an employee, can be a contractor. EAS does not. We provide information and advice on how to set up the FSVP importer office. We are not an FSVP importer, but we will fulfill the role of the FSVP qualified individual. And that qualified individual, by definition in the regulation, must have knowledge, education, or background in food safety. So it can't be, you know, my grandson who's high school and has taken 2 years of biology. It's got to be somebody that has experience in food safety. And so EAS, again, to repeat, does perform the role of a qualified individual. Now, the other part is something that may not be obvious because it's a different regulation. The foreign supplier or manufacturer must provide records or documents to the FSVP importer and the qualified individual, frankly, that they are operating in compliance with the preventive controls for human foods regulation or the preventive controls for animal feed if that is the product that's being exported to the U.S. So we have two regulations, actually. Most people talk about FSVP or foreign supplier verification, but the preventive controls is very important in providing the foundation. So Canada, if you're exporting from anywhere except Canada, New Zealand, or Australia, it's pretty straightforward. You have to do everything, pretty much. There are some exemptions for some foods, but that wasn't the question, so we won't go into that. But if you are exporting from Canada, New Zealand, or Australia, the press releases would have you believe that FSVP doesn't apply and that the preventive controls doesn't apply. I would caution you that isn't entirely true. The details of what applies are being worked out. And so while the preventive controls regulation may not apply in all cases, let's presume that it does apply even for Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. And I'll tell you why. For instance, infant formula is exempt by itself regardless of where you ship from. Some of the aseptic or low-acid canned food products are exempt from preventive controls regardless of where you ship from, except because some of these countries, these three countries, don't have regulations for infant formula or low-acid canned food similar to the U.S. The US FDA has said, oh, wait a minute, those are special cases. So as you start listing the special cases for Canada, New Zealand, and Australia, the list gets very, very long. So my suggestion is when you are shipping from one of those three countries, contact EAS, or some other company, hopefully EAS, because we can then investigate whether these published exemptions actually apply to you and your food. Amy, did I miss anything?
No, I think that's perfect. Thank you. One person just wants to confirm, can an employee of a company be appointed as a U.S. agent if it resides in the U.S.?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Second question, similar question. Another person wants to know about typical pricing for U.S. agent services, what services are included, how do follow-up interactions generally work. And this person's question is specific to EAS. Okay.
Well, EAS works on a couple of different approaches depending on the need of the U.S. agent service that's provided. In general, EAS works on an hourly basis. Happy to share that with you if you want to make a contact with us and go over the details on how we do that. There is also generally a U.S. agent fee, which is applied at the initial onset of each year that you require that service, and that allows us to cover drafting and submitting the memorandums of appointment, making sure that everything is lined up with the FDA for the U.S. agent activities that we may be asked to take on for your responses. The other thing that fee tends to cover is the ability for you to reference EAS as your U.S. agent service, which often is asked for by more than simply the FDA. So a lot of import brokers and customs houses, things like that, will ask for that information and expect it to be provided, and add certain questions for the U.S. agent as they try to coordinate the practical, importation and movement of your materials, in and out of the country.
Yeah, this is Alan. I would repeat that for the U.S. agent is a little different than FSVP importer or FSVP qualified individual, but the answer is actually very similar in that EAS provides these services on an hourly basis, whether we are just providing advice on how to set up an FSVP importer office, or whether we are performing the qualified individual requirements. It's on an hourly basis, and it's really dependent upon how many products are being imported, the volumes, the frequency. Is there a language issue where we have to have some of the documents and records translated that have to be kept at the FSVP importer's office? Those all play, but we'd be happy to talk to you one-on-one about this. Thank you.
And I do see a number of. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I might just add to that if you're strictly dealing with the communications aspects of the U.S. agent between the, say, FDA Center for Drugs and the customer, the company in general, most of those transactions take generally between 5 to 15 minutes to effectively execute, track, and communicate. So you're not looking at a tremendous number of hours per month or per year engaged in the U.S. agent activity if you're in a steady state company and you're simply continuing your manufacturing processes. If you're engaged in some weighty FDA inspections, you have pending applications or new product concepts that are being presented, you might expect a lot more effort to be taken by your U.S. agent to help you get to the right FDA office, communicate the right information at the right level of detail. So just wanted to add that. Thank you, Amy.
And I was going to say we have a number of questions specific to the questioners. So for those of you who have asked questions specific to our business, I will pass your question and contact information on to either Brian, Victoria, or Alan as appropriate so that they can provide more specific details. And I don't see any other questions beyond those that are company specific. So I will say thanks to everyone for joining us today. We appreciate your interest in EAS. If you have questions that were not asked as part of this Q&A session, you're welcome to email us at the email address on the screen, usagent@easconsultinggroup.com. And thank you so much for your time. Have a great afternoon.